Did you know something new is invented every 10 minutes? Join us as we speak to the innovators reinventing our world here on planet Earth and far, far beyond. Welcome to GTWN Now, a podcast brought to you by the Global Telecom Women's Network and sponsored by CMS Global. GTWN Now introduces the movers and the makers at the cutting edge of technology who are committed to keeping us all connected. In each episode, we invite a leading expert to share her experience building life-changing inventions in places and spaces that don't yet exist, and the inspiration they must muster to tackle the impossible. We also ask our guests to share tips, tools, and strategies to reach your own moonshot. I'm your host, Rasali Gitau, founder of Bixi FinTech for Women and Global Telecom Women's Network International Board member. Welcome to GTWN Now. Hello, GTWNers, or winners, as I like to call you. Welcome back to another episode of GTWN Now. Today's episode is our third installment of a 5-part series that focuses on the 2025 issue of the Mobile Century, an industry-leading publication that zeroes in this year on digital humanism. And today, we have joining us a contributor to Issues Past of the Mobile Century, and she is none other than Saira Faisal Syed. Saira is the first Pakistani woman to be nominated to the GTWN International Board. She's the GSMA's lead for Pakistan, Nepal, and Mongolia within the APEX team, and her contributions to digital transformation, policy, and innovation have truly been extraordinary, particularly in fostering inclusion and diversity across the telecom ecosystem. Saira was instrumental in launching the Diversity for Tech community in Pakistan and has driven numerous initiatives to empower women through digital and financial literacy programs. She excels in shaping policy, fostering multi-stakeholder collaboration, and advancing diversity, equity, and inclusion within the digital economy. Saira is really dedicated to gender equality, inclusion, and social change, and she has positioned herself as a key influencer in the mobile technology and telecom sectors with a deep understanding of the region's regulatory and digital landscape. Saira, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Rosalia, and I'm so excited to be here. And thank you for all this warm introduction. Just to add a bit more that for the past 1 decade or more, my work has focused primarily on digital transformation, gender inclusion, ethical tech, and also bringing underserved voices into digital policy and practice. And that's both in Pakistan and also across the APAC region with my amazing GSMA APAC policy team as well. So yeah, I'm happy to be here and happy to contribute.
Well, I mean, you know, it's as we just noted, you're the first woman from Pakistan to be included in the GTWN International Board. So your perspective is truly unique and so valued. So I really just want to jump right in. This year's issue, the Mobile Century, published in 2025. And we published it on at the Mobile World Congress in Barcelona this year. And it features 12 articles that focus on different aspects of digital humanism. You've had a chance to look at it, review it. We looked at it together in Barcelona. I'd love to get some of your thoughts on this year's publication. Did anything stick out to you? I know that you've contributed in prior issues. Particularly, you wrote a really compelling piece about digital inclusion in Pakistan in last year's The Mobile Century. I'd love to know, what stuck out to you, what's changed in that regard, and why?
Sure. But first of all, before I begin with the question, I really like the theme around digital humanism. And frankly speaking, I thoroughly enjoyed all the 12 articles. But personally, the piece that resonated deeply with me was the one that framed digital humanism as tech with a conscience, because that's what that's the space that I live in and breathe in. And I think that's what we all do, right? And that's what we all need, tech with a conscience. So coming from a province of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, shortly called as KPK in Pakistan, and which is commonly stereotyped as the most underrepresented place for women in tech. So my own journey, my own journey was, it wasn't just about access. It was about fighting invisibility. And, I was often the only woman in the room, right? And I remember thinking to myself that if I have made it here, I have a responsibility to bring others in. And that's why you previously mentioned as well, when myself and my GSMA APAC team, we launched Diversity for Tech Community in Pakistan. It wasn't just a project, it was sort of personal for me too. And now, I mean, it's been more than 1 year into that community. We have women from across Pakistan and even, from globally as well, who feel, they feel seen, valued, and heard in the digital space. So that article, which talks about tech with a conscience, reminded me that we just don't need more tech. We need tech that listens and that empowers, right? So if I may, over the past 1 year, I've been leading policy dialogues within the country and supporting the teams across the APAC region on digital trust, which is working closely with the government, the mobile operators, and also the digital platforms to shape safer and more inclusive digital environments. And I've also been deeply involved along with my GSMA Mobile for Development team in supporting the development of digital gender policy in Pakistan with the Pakistan Telecommunication Authority, which is the telecom regulator, contributing policy inputs which are grounded in the lived realities of Pakistani women. So just to say that we're not just advocating from boardrooms. We are listening to voices from the urban areas, from the villages, and everything in between. And I mean, there are a lot of questions that, arise that what do women need to feel digitally empowered in the work that we've been doing around, the questions around why does trust, what does trust mean when you have been scammed, or you have been silenced or surveilled? So for me, digital humanism is about anchoring policies in empathy and action. And that's what I've committed to myself in the past 1 year. And I would also like to give a few examples to you from Pakistan, where we've seen quite a few cases where women, especially those using a smartphone for the first time, they download apps that promise instant cash, right? So the app looks helpful at first, but they secretly ask for access to personal photos and contact list. You know how they do, right? So later, the same women started getting threatening messages. Some were even blackmailed. And what's the worst part? Many didn't even know how did it happen or where did their personal data go. And the problem here isn't just the scam. It's that many women aren't aware how to protect their data or spot a warning sign, right? And we know that it causes emotional stress and fear, and sometimes they don't even want to talk about it out of embarrassment or shame. And also this is a problem that we encountered many times. To tackle this, our GSMA members and partners have been holding training sessions to help women understand a few things which are around how to manage their finances safely online, using digital tools smartly, how to do that, and how to keep your personal information secure. These are very important things, but there is a lot of opportunity still. A lot of work needs to be done. And if I may also jump into another example while attending one of the workshops that we did during the development of the national gender policy here in Pakistan. A young woman, and we did those workshops across all the 4 provinces. Like I mentioned, we heard all the voices. There was a woman who got a message on WhatsApp about a remote data entry job, right? And it sounded very attractive.
Yes.
Yeah, for a woman to work from home, easy way to earn, and but they asked for a small registration fee, right, through a mobile wallet. And she sent the money because it looked quite easy to her, but of course, they disappeared, blocked her. There wasn't any job, no refund, and if you look at it, sadly, this kind of scam isn't rare. It happens quite a lot, and I can look at you as well, that you being nodding and all that. It actually takes advantage of women who are trying to earn money, right? And the deeper issue here is now the lack of trust and safety online. And these scammers are using economic pressure, and we know that they target women specifically, right? Also, with this problem, since we've been working in the market with our members and partners as well, who have helped now, train more and more women become digital freelancers and marketers, so that they not only have, better job options, but also know, how to verify online opportunities, spot red flags if there are, and protect themselves from being misled. So, but having given you these examples, and that's why Tech with a Conscience resonated with me, that this is the work that we've been doing here in Pakistan and across the APAC region as priority as well. But there's still a lot of opportunity and discussion that needs with the ecosystem to enable more and more women, and to counter these scams that are affecting women more than men.
So I believe the article you're referring to is Victoria Hernandez's piece. And I have to say, I also was very biased, and you're not the first person who's in this 5-part series has flagged that one as the favorite child of the magazine. So well done, Victoria, for being a fan favorite. And so for, shameless plug to the listeners, the Mobile Century is available on our website, and it's in our show notes. This year's publication focused, as Saira was mentioning, on digital humanism, which is kind of examines how technology is or can be or should be used in furtherance of humanity. And the 12 articles kind of dissect to what extent the technology that we see today is in pursuant of this lofty goal, right? And you so aptly mentioned, it was really interesting. At first you're saying, oh, Victoria's article about the human conscious and technology, and it was interesting that then you started talking about security concerns among vulnerable populations, and some would, if you frame that by starting with the problem and then moving backwards, that would have been a discussion around cybersecurity. But you go a step deeper, which is, this is about what is right and wrong. Like, how can some of the technology that we're putting out there really harm people or really empower people? And especially when you're talking about traditionally marginalized groups, unless we put some of these things in place and really design products with them in mind, like really put the human at the center of the digital part, like in the digital humanism, you're going to render outcomes that you can't even anticipate. I'm sure, as we've discussed, I built an app, my company built an app for women to empower financial literacy, et cetera. And, we're not nefarious, actors. And it doesn't even occur that, oh, of course, somebody else could just say that they're doing the same thing and be a nefarious actor and take all of the photos and the contact details and use that, against the individual. And And so how do you basically safeguard that, but at the same time promote innovation and technology? So I think that, one of the picking up this year's issue, people can really see like, this is my day-to-day job. I have to really think about keeping scams off of women's phones, and how do I do this? It really begins at the core. How do we inculcate in people a conscience when they're designing products? I mean, that's the $1 billion question.
Yeah.
You solve that, you're going to solve everything. I guess this is, really good segue to one of the questions I've been really thinking about and grappling with in this 5-part series on the mobile century is, the publication is called the Mobile Century, and it started over 10 years ago, right, by the founders of GTWN. And it seemed like it was 15 years ago, and it was the turn of the century, right? We're squarely in the century now. We are a quarter of the way through the century. And I think even when I was first thinking, I was like, oh, how did we make it a quarter? I felt like it just started. What are some of your observations over this past 25 years? I'm not going to, like, how, not only from a professional standpoint, so obviously you have over a decade of professional experience, but how have you seen this mobile century really evolve over the last 25 years? You talked a little bit about your evolution from, tech neophyte to at the center of technology. Obviously, that's to some extent aided by technological developments. I'd love to understand how you've seen the evolution of the mobile century over its last quarter.
Yeah, this is quite interesting as well. And, I've been actively following the mobile century for some time, right? Looking back, if, the first 2 decades were about, access, connecting the unconnected, I believe that the next chapter is about digital dignity, right? I will continue the theme that we've been talking about. We've done incredible work in connecting people. By we, I mean the world, right? Everyone. But connection without consciousness is risky. It's not just about devices or coverage, right? It's about safety, literacy, and trust. I mean, the way the stuff that we've been talking about, and that's something which is now getting quite a lot of focus around within the region and globally as well. And if I may, in the last 1 year alone, we've made quite bold progress in the direction never taken before. And, I was fortunate enough to be part of a delegation of women leaders from the corporate sector to the president of Pakistan, and we presented the digital access and digital trust issue to his office directly. And not only that, we presented our suggestions to him, at the meeting, but we also presented our suggestions in the form of recommendations as a letter, which was shared with his office for additions in the national policy. And also, we brought the GSMA Digital Nation Summit to Pakistan, where we hosted policy dialogues on digital trust and safety, and supported our partners and members in training women to recognize and report digital scams. So and I have seen firsthand that when we equip women not just with the smartphones, but if I may say with smart confidence, the ripple effect is literally transformative. It's like you are reclaiming the internet as a safe, secure, inclusive space. But yes, there's a lot to be done, and we must continue our rigorous efforts towards it. Now, coming to another aspect, to answer your question further, in the past year as well, we've seen how generative AIs and algorithms have taken over, and they can unintentionally widen the gender gap if we don't have ethical frameworks in place, right? In APAC, across the region, GSM has been working on contributing to national and international conversations around responsible and ethical AI practices and gender representation, ensuring that the systems we are building don't leave women behind, right? I came across this research paper which was talking about women accent pattern recognition. I mean, I was like quite surprised to learn that many voice-based customer care service, solutions, they don't understand South Asian women accents, and I mean, they don't understand them properly. So women they often have to repeat themselves again and again, and sometimes they give up on the call, which can be really frustrating. And especially when you're trying to tackle something very important like online banking or a helpline. And it's not just an inconvenience, it makes people feel ignored or excluded, right? And from the digital space, the digital services that are supposed to help them, of course. So if we break this into what's going wrong here. So we can easily say that AI isn't trained to recognize a variety of accents, right? Which means that women can access tech. Of course they can, but it's not always usable for them. And it's a daily reminder that the convenience to tech doesn't work equally for everyone. That was something which surprised me, and it can have a lot of powerful discussion and opportunity here. And another aspect that I wanted to bring into this discussion was limited representation in AI design by women, right? When it comes to big decisions about AI and future of tech, very few women are in the room, especially from this region, South Asia, right? This means that AI is being built in ways which may not reflect the needs of half of the population, if I may say. So the issue here is that if you're not included in design, most probably it's not going to be useful for you. And we need to shift towards AI that's built with people, not just for them, moving towards human-centered governance as well. And yet again, this calls for powerful discussion and great opportunity on balancing innovation and inclusion. These were some of the aspects that I wanted to bring in, but now I want to intentionally circle back to my earlier comment that it's not just about AI. Like I said, I've seen firsthand how digital scams are increasingly targeting women, and especially the first-time users. That's why we also launched some of the campaigns around Smartphone for All initiative in the last few years, which wasn't just giving about handsets or devices to the women, but teaching them how to use them safely and securely. So the transformation now is not just about bringing women online. It's about making sure that they can thrive with awareness, with security and protection. So my focus more is now, if I may say, making the smart transformation possible in that way, because that's where I believe that the future now needs to go. We can debate further about it, but I think, in my opinion, it has to be in the future towards digital dignity and smart transformation consciousness, where we enable masses to feel secure and autonomous online.
I love that, digital dignity. I think that's a perfect way to kind of maybe frame even today's discussion, the mobile century, quarter way through. Where's the digital dignity inherent in all of this? Again, this is why you're the first person in our 5-episode arc that's really honed in on that. It's been a really interesting diversity of opinions on like what is most pertinent in this century. And I love that you brought up digital dignity. You're the first one to do that. So a very unique and valued perspective. I'd love to talk a little bit about, I'm guessing we're age contemporaries, millennials to some extent. I'm an older millennial, but fine. I just age myself. We are the most unique of all the generations, obviously, because we remember time one and time two. we lived before the internet, and now we all live in the internet, I think, ostensibly. And so we know the difference between the two, where, you know, we're not quite native, but we're not quite foreign. We're like a third country kid. I'm one of those, in the digital landscape, in the digital arena. How do you see Gen Z in all of this, talking about the mobile century, talking about digital dignity? Because, one of the things about the wild, wild west and technology is it's an unregulated space, right? Broadly speaking, everything goes. And it's also what is often called an attention economy. How you garner success is by attracting attention. And often the algorithms reward different, not necessarily always the, how do I say this? No, how do I say this correctly? It's like not always the most valoristic of, society's contemporary values, right? And we have an entire generation that is fully native. They're not from planet Earth, they're from the internet.
Yeah.
And how do we empower? Do you think that technological advances empower or disempower them? And I think but beyond that, because yes and no, of course, there's some powers and some, disempowers. If you were to give it like top three placements, what are the three most empowering things that AI and technology do for them? And what are the three most disempowering things that AI and technology do for them? And where does Gen Z fall in this digital dignity landscape? Because from where I'm sitting, I don't know if it's super dignified, but fine.
I mean, it's such a long discussion, and I'm really excited that you asked this question because I mean we've been talking about all that's been happening for the last 2 decades and all, but one of the most noticeable shift happening around is how Gen Z, especially women, are stepping into the digital world. And I would also, sort of reference, I'll put some reference from Pakistan as well, because most of them are preferring to work from home and, offering their services or working their businesses online, right? And like you said, yes, they are tech native, but they're not necessarily digitally safe or financially literate, right? We can agree to that. I know that they're using Instagram and ChatGPT, but many still fall prey to financial scams, phishing, or misinformation disguised as an opportunity. I mean, we discussed plenty of them, but that were general. But if you look at the new generation, and later on I'll allude to one specific example as well. But,
if I may actually add, not to interrupt what you're saying, but
sure.
you're kind of pointing out discerning truth from fiction on the internet, which is so interesting because the episode just before yours, we actually bring on an amazing AI expert. And that is the crux of everything. And it's one of the things that Gen Z finds the most challenging, not knowing what's real and what's not on the internet.
Exactly. And I was actually, I wanted to quickly discuss Gen Z caselet on, digital confidence and hidden vulnerabilities, which I took during one of the workshops, right? I attended with a partner, and, a 19-year-old girl from one of the provinces in Pakistan, like, of course, a Gen Z population, right? Which is growing and navigating a digital first life, right? So with her smartphone and free Canva account, she started, making digital birthday cards, greeting cards, and she was selling them through Instagram and TikTok, right? Now, the story sounds quite good till here. And her business picked up quite quickly, of course, it's the world of the internet, until she was connected by someone who was offering to help her scale her new business and offered a new mobile wallet, that could facilitate international payments as well. Now, who would not want, right? To expand beyond your own market, right? So what she didn't know was that the app is fake, right? And she transferred, all her earnings, luckily not that much at that time because she had newly started and picking up, but she transferred them to the scammers platform, which disappeared a day later, and no support, no complaint portal. And worst of all, no one around her knew how to, report it or recover the amount. Now, what's striking about this case isn't the lack of access, right? It's the lack of her awareness. This shows that, being part of a digitally confident generation that knows how to use digital tools is not enough. I mean, they need to know how they can use these tools for their own safety and security. And this is not just one-off, right? I mean, most of the Gen Z population, and since I'm focusing more on women during my discussion, they are digital first, but they are digitally fragile, if I may say, right? They adopt platforms quite fast. They trust blindly, and then they start running these side hustles, not knowing about, data privacy, scam detection or even, digital financial literacy. And if I'm allowed, I want to jump into another aspect as well that I wanted to mention about Gen Z is that they expect more transparency as well, right? They're asking themselves, who's behind this app? Where does my data go? Why can't I use this app similar to the way my brother can, right? So in this regard, there is an opportunity to focus on creating frameworks that speak their language. We need to cater to them as well moving forward, right? Meaning simplified digital literacy content, AI explainers, scam prevention tools, and which are tailored for younger mobile first population, or like we say, Gen Z, right? And quickly, the most interesting thing that I wanted to draw here was a reference to the new Netflix series, which is called Adolescence, right?
Oh, I've heard of it. I cannot watch it. I have too many kids.
But the reason I wanted to bring reference to this series was that as a parent of two teenage daughters, right? I am conscious that today's youth is being shaped by the digital content in real life, right? The algorithms that recommend content, right, they don't understand vulnerability. They're only optimized for engagement, right? And that's why I believe, since I come from policy background, I believe that policy must act as a guardrail for them, right? As an ethical guardrail. And the teenagers, like the ones that were portrayed in the series, they aren't just users, they're actually targets. And if you see their data, their behavior, and even their insecurities are monetized. So we need sort of clear, enforceable data protection laws, especially that are age and gender specific and sensitive to that, so that, we can prioritize consent and transparency around it. And also, realizing from there was that AI doesn't recognize trauma. They don't understand trauma, right? So it will never pause to think if to ask if a 13-year-old should be let to see some violent or radicalizing content, or should the 13-year-old be fed that content. It follows patterns, we know, right? And without AI governance frameworks in place, I mean, we are getting into an era where we might risk turning these digital spaces into sort of emotional battlegrounds for our young people. So we need to put these AI, governance frameworks in place, which include harm prevention. And it's also, in designing one of these AI policies, or, the training of data and all, like I mentioned before, the voices of these people need to be in there. So, to reflect on this conversation around women and Gen Z, I think the digital future, that we're building isn't just about innovation. It has to be about intention, right?
Hmm. That's I hate to end us on such a negative note, but
Yeah,
not
but
negative. I mean, it's, I not,
there's so much
how
to
do I
be,
say, you're so much of a
discussed.
better parent than I am. I'm like, oh, I can't watch that because I have kids and I'm sticking my head in the sand. I can't watch it. And you're like, I looked at it, I stared it in the face, and we need to do something about it. So you're
I
right.
mean, the
You're a
thing
better
is,
parent.
I have two teenage girls, right? And those who know me, I worry a lot because, like we said, this is the generation that is born with internet, right? And what social media and internet can do is sometimes mind-boggling, right? And with these young minds, that's why, when I heard about it, I was like, I have to see it, and these sort of series also teach you, how you can sort of counter such
Hmm.
behaviors, or, like we work in the policy. So, okay, fine. Oh, no, we now need to work on policies that ensure harm
Yeah.
prevention and all that. So, I mean, it's giving us
Well,
ideas
storytell,
and
yeah, stories matter. Stories are, is art reflecting life, or is life reflecting art? And it's all part of that. And no, it's such a critically important, we talk about Gen Z, and like you rightly point out, why it matters for the future is we're in charge of drafting those policies now. We're in charge of creating those guardrails now. And if we don't, we're going to end up in arguably something that's not the best. The last quarter of the century isn't going to be as good as the first quarter. um, I guess the last thing I would ask is if you could sum up in 3 points your top three pieces of advice for anyone listening. Like I said, we're a quarter way through the next quarter of the mobile century. What would be your three pieces of advice entering the next quarter of the mobile century?
so, like throughout the discussion, we've been talking about, I think, the three pieces of advice would be um, anchored around intentional humanism, if I may say, because, AI, emerging tech, is taking the center stage. So, we might risk scaling inequality instead of solutions if we don't act with consciousness and intentional humanism, lobbying for responsible and ethical AI as well. Number two is that, and I also wanted to mention around, the future principle for me, from my perspective, is that technology must not widen the gender gap. It must shrink it, right? And this is something that, we need to keep in mind. And the third one is, whenever we include women, whenever women are included, specifically in the context of AI and development and all that, whenever they are included, not as a market, but as makers, we not just only build
Hmm.
a mobile century, but a meaningful one, right? So, I mean, these are something like two, three things that are very close to my heart. And, in the end, I would also like to push forward. For me, the future isn't just mobile, right? It's about mindfulness. Um, it's about the future where we not only build systems, but we build them with safety, equity, and consciousness, right? In every layer of it. And that's how, a human intention must define it. I think, yeah, to sum it up.
I love it. That's a happy way to end.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much, Saida, for joining us today and sharing your perspective. Um, we're so excited to, to really hear and listen and figure out how we're going to implement your next 3 steps in the next quarter century. And of course, invite you back for the next publication of the Mobile Century 2026. Where are we now? So thank you so much for joining today's podcast. And I really look forward to having you on again.
Thank you so much, Rosalia, for having me. And of course, definitely, always like to contribute.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I want to thank our guest for joining today's episode of GTWN Now, and give a big thank you to our sponsors, CMS Global, for making this episode possible. Today's podcast will be available on our website, gtwn.org, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you'll be notified when new episodes drop. I'm your host, Rosalia Gitau, GTWN International Board Member, wishing you a week of wonder.